What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your man, the Crypto Titan. We're here on YouTube with Mr. Ben Jorgensen. I hope I said your name
Hello.
right.
Yeah. That's how you're supposed to say it. I think I say it wrong.
Awesome.
Weird.
All right. So he is the CEO of Constellation. If you are not familiar with this man, they are making moves like crazy. They're out here doing a lot of different things. They got a lot of partnerships coming. In fact, we're going to talk about a particular partnership today with StackPath. So before we get into StackPath and everything, let's just go ahead and dive into yourself, Mr. Jorgensen. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Constellation.
Yeah, I'd love to. Great to talk with everybody. I've been in Silicon Valley for about 10 years and have worked for many tier one VC-backed startups from the ground floor, from just 5 people to 350, and have kind of seen the whole realm of building companies out here. I built my last startup, which was an ad tech company that integrated digital music into ads, and so we had a unique piece of technology that would dynamically place music from like Sony Entertainment and Universal, and we sold that in 2015. And really I spent the better part of several years kind of exploring what's the next big technology out there, what are entrepreneurs doing, and then going through a little bit of a search fund. How good was I as a leader? How do I motivate teams? How do I improve on that? Which kind of all paths led me into Constellation, if you will, and how I met Wyatt, one of my co-founders, but also how I met Benjamin Diggles and Matthias as well, who are some of our core leadership at Constellation. Yeah.
Nice, man. Nice.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey. Yes.
I'll bet. So most cryptocurrency projects are based on the blockchain, but Constellation Labs not Constellation Labs, but Constellation Network and DAG are not actually blockchain projects. Can you briefly explain how the direct acyclic graph differs from the blockchain?
Yeah, so I think this is a pretty interesting conversation that I can actually back it up a little bit. And I worked for a group they're a derivative of the Singularity University, which is spearheaded by Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis and Salim Ismail. And I worked with Salim to build out their revenue model around exponential organizations. So we would go into organizations and introduce emerging technologies such as blockchain technology. And so this was my first foray into understanding what blockchain is. And so when I met Wyatt, I was introduced to Wyatt, and he had this brilliant mind of walking me through where we were with Bitcoin and blockchain to what Ethereum had done with homogeneous data sets and binary logic. And then his view was there's a third generation, or an evolution that comes, which would allow for real world data or streaming data to come onto a distributed network using cryptographic security. And so as your mind goes from understanding blockchain, you start to go, wait, there's this whole other world. Yeah, there's another level.
Right.
And what that other level was an architecture built on a directed acyclic graph, which for all intents and purposes, he had been building DAGs for the better course of his career, which is an effective way to organize data across multiple systems. And this directed acyclic graph would then use topologically ordered data so that an AI expert or a data scientist could easily organize data for high computational throughput. So what all that means is all this means is that you can't really do much with the Ethereum network, and Ethereum networks kind of leveraged itself to like supply chain use cases, where DAG was all about the basis of Silicon Valley and software, right? Like here you are, big data needs, if any real engineer wants to use this technology, they need to be able to integrate it with existing tech stacks, and it needs to be able to handle mass amounts of data. Hopefully that does a good job of explaining.
No, actually,
I like to always do that evolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I guess the problem is, everybody's trying to make these cool projects, these cool ideas, Ethereum is obviously, one of the biggest projects in blockchain period, and it doesn't even really integrate well with existing infrastructure, so you can't even really use it like you'd really want to, right?
Sure. It's found itself with like great use cases, and so the whole Ethereum and Consensus group have really built their brand around supply chain use cases, right, or where you don't need a lot of transactions, right? Like that's not where Constellation it finds itself working, right? Just like you don't need some crazy amount of software to power logistics, or I don't know if that's a great use case, but they're completely different worlds, right, use cases that we're tackling. And Ethereum is great. Like they've successfully created a token that is organically used every day. Right. Probably the best example.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So what are the benefits that that you would say that DAG has that other decentralized systems, basically over decentralized systems like Ethereum, like the best benefits?
Yeah, well, it's asynchronous. So at the core of what a DAG is a graph-based database, right? And so everybody in cryptographic security and big data uses graph-based databases. If you are an AI expert or you do machine learning, you're like the application layer on top of an architecture like a DAG. Okay, so if you're like, hey, if I'm an AI expert, like you need these certain criteria to be able to run AI and machine learning algorithms. Right. So the benefit of DAG is really around streaming data processes. So taking just like the Twitter fire hose of data and being able to effectively organize it across a graph is something you cannot do with a synchronous blockchain. And so it compounds the problem further because you're looking at an asynchronous structure that can organize data for IoT, streaming data processes, and consumer tech, and so forth.
Right. That's awesome. So now underlying direct acyclic graph technology is also being used in the IOTA project. I know you're familiar with IOTA.
Sure. Yeah.
So Richard Hart had an amazing takedown video of it a while ago. What has your team done to ensure that things are working in a functional manner and that it will work right out of the box, so to speak?
Yeah, so IOTA's been kind of like the grandfather of the space, right? We actually have had myriad of phone calls with them, and they're very aware of what we're doing and what we're tackling. But they are the trailblazers in the space, and with every trailblazer, you can we've been able to learn from that. So a lot of what Constellation has done has been kind of looking at what they've done and making sure we're set up to fix some of the bugs and holes and gaps that exist within their technology. So, I know it's got some flaws, but they've got an amazing foundation that is very conscious of what they're doing. And they've been successful at deploying POCs and sandbox use cases. So, where Constellation's coming in is trying to evolve that and fix a lot of the problems that they've run into, and make it easy for people to test and debug an implementation, which is also called application support, before actually deploying on a network. So that's like one of the simple things that we're already doing is providing application support. Right. For certain integrations like that. So my hats go off to IOTA and what they've done, and it's very forward thinking in general. Awesome.
So it'd be hard to do this interview without talking about your U.S. Air Force partnership, because everybody, sure. I'm sure people are they're still wondering. I don't know how many interviews you've had since then, but I'm sure people are still wondering about what exactly you guys are going to be helping the U.S. Air Force with, or what you can tell us, and like how did that deal go down, I guess.
Yeah, actually, there is still the news is still percolating.
Yeah, it's still circulating. It was on Forbes,
yeah, I mean,
you know.
yeah, it was on Forbes a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago. That was actually a complete shock to us.
That's awesome.
I woke up on Friday morning and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, there's a giant piece on the U.S. Air Force in Forbes."
Yeah, you can't.
And I was like, "Dude, that was amazing." You know, we did not plan for it. It wasn't paid for.
Right.
It was pretty exciting to see that come about. And you know, I think there's a couple things that are really exciting about the Air Force deal. This is something that the Air Force, you know, we applied to work with the Air Force not under a blockchain flag, meaning we're not coming to the table going, "Hey, we've got a blockchain solution, work with us on a POC."
Right.
We actually went out and said, what are their current big data problems? And one was multi-domain command and control, which in simple terms means the transfer of data between systems, data systems.
Right.
So legacy system data that collect data, or cloud infrastructure data, and providing interoperability or solutions for the communication of two different data systems. And so where the military has traditionally been, and the mindset has been over the past 40 years, is siloing data sets for protection, so that not all of data sets are prone to hacking or vulnerabilities. Right. But now they're starting to see, and this is kind of like collective consciousness that's evolved, is that we see that there's a ton of value in sharing different data sets and creating new logic and applications on top of that. And so Constellation applied to as a solution for multi-domain command and control, which right now, an interesting fact is that is the largest problem and pain point in the United States Air Force, which is allocating about 20% of time and resources towards. So that's the largest piece of pie out of all the initiatives. So we know we're hitting a vein of not, and you know, we're hitting a vein of an existing problem set that is there, and they're looking for a multitude of solutions, and our solution happens to use open and distributed networks on a graph-based database, right? So that becomes really exciting when you see that, because a lot of my criticism of the blockchain space in general has been a lot of solutions to things that don't have problems.
Right.
And so the question, you know, and so you see these you know, a decentralized Uber application. Like, why? I think there's actually, do we need this? I think there's a lot of benefit to having a centralized customer support, and you know, so maybe I don't want to go into all that, because I'm sure I'm going to get people like yelling.
Hey man, there might be a decentralized Uber app out there. You never know.
I think there totally is. And I've heard. I went to some like conference like a couple months ago in San Mateo, and everybody had these applications that like used blockchain, and I'm like, what? First, ask yourself why. Yeah, why? Actually, it's funny. Wyatt has a sticker on his laptop that has a sign that says, "Do you need blockchain?" And then there's an arrow that says no. I mean, it's just funny because, you know, Wyatt's my CTO and co-founder, and he's the brains behind all this. And so it's just funny to see. But yeah, so yeah, the Air Force deal is very big. The other kind of reason it's really, really big is that we're starting to see, you know, commercial entities, public companies moving away from POCs and starting to see the market viability of this technology when certain needs are met, and you can articulate a certain level of professional vernacular that meet the threshold of somebody like the United States Air Force. So there is a general trend to providing scalable solutions to real world problems that exist. And I think that maturing is something that the entire blockchain space needs, and to see that kind of beacon of light for Constellation. I mean, you can spend, I mean, like there's, you know, it's a giant organization with over 300,000 employees. Like, I don't know if we can even fathom that. And they have the largest budget out of any division of the military yet. And so when you kind of factor all that in, and what we got accepted into, kind of brings us into the good old boy club of the military, which is very hard to break through.
Yes.
And once you're in, you're in. And so we're just starting to realize what kind of comes with that and the type of support and tools that come with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I can't imagine like what's next for you guys, after doing a partnership with the U.S. Air Force. So.
Oh man, I mean, we just had a few calls today with different subgroups on kind of navigating the layout, and we formed a partnership with this group called Decisive Point, DecisivePoint.co. Actually, nobody knows that. We haven't really announced that. It's kind of under the radar. Yeah, an awesome group of people to work with that are like veteran military people that can help us navigate the waters. And this isn't like an accelerator program that's like 3 weeks long and you have 3 weeks to prove yourself. This is like a lifelong journey that we have into figuring out the different paths of navigating the Air Force.
Right, that's amazing, man. So let's see. So your mainnet is coming out very soon. So I know we've been talking about that a lot. So that's coming out in October. Now. Yeah,
it's October, right?
We're here.
So we've accepted about 40 node operators to date to be a part of the network, and that came about in 2 batches. We call batch 0, which is, I kind of call our Navy SEALs. These are our technicians. These are the ones that are helping write Terraform scripts to make it easy to deploy nodes. They're debugging, and they're also going to provide assistance to all the foundational nodes that need to come online. And so these guys I call as the Navy SEALs because they uphold the network. Yesterday we sent out the first batch, which is kind of our loyalist. So over the past year, we've kind of monitored how people respond in the community. How do they make introductions? We built kind of an offline reputation of these individuals, and basically it was just observing how people leaned in and if they were genuine and not, because so much of this space is trust. So it's been really exciting to see. My Telegram has been like blowing up for the past 2 days of people like, here's why I should be a node operator, which is so exciting to see the passion kind of seep through. And it's definitely addictive in some context to see a community come alive.
And it's genuine too. It's not like, it's not like in 2017 everybody just wants to throw money around. This is a real company, and you guys are doing real things out here. So.
Yeah, there's like it's funny to see how people try to get your attention, right? And we're such a genuine and honest team that it's like just be real, be honest, be who you are, like talk to us like a normal person. Do not demand stuff, and I think that's kind of like the you see the whole industry start to mature and start to take.
I think it's shifting in that direction. At least I've seen it. So.
Totally. I mean, there's been a lot of noise for the past couple of years, and it's nice to see this okay, I got to come to the table with something,
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
it's been great.
So now let's just go ahead and touch on StackPath. So we're gonna get into StackPath and the really the reason for this interview. So a lot of people don't really understand, how important StackPath, that the partnership is with StackPath. So that's partly why we want to do this interview, because we want to explain what it really means, because it's from my understanding, it's similar to a cloud computing platform like AWS.
Sure.
If I'm not familiar. Or
yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, just explain. How does this relate to edge computing, which is what you guys are focusing on.
Yeah, so the StackPath partnership is not an obvious one to people. Yeah. So if you look at the past 2 years and how blockchain technologies have announced partnership, it's like, boom, we got a partnership, and it's going to drive more usage of the network.
Right.
And, it totally makes sense, and you need that. But what we've always looked at is how do we make this super simple for every stakeholder involved in our ecosystem to plug blockchain or distributed networks into their existing applications, right?
Right.
that's kind of what we set talking about, which is Constellation's building a bunch of APIs that plug into existing tech stacks, right? Existing streaming data processes.
Yes.
So if you take this whole mindset of making it, uber simple for people to integrate this technology, you also have to look at management procurement processes. So if you go to a major company, let's say like a Boeing, for example, and Boeing says, great, we want to try your technology. They have to then go to their finance team to say, hey, we're going to work with this company. Now imagine somebody in finance going, oh my God, what's blockchain? Oh wait, but it's not blockchain, it's a DAG, right? Like, so this whole so now they've got to understand that to be able to sign off to approved budget.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're Boeing, Boeing's got a cloud infrastructure provider of some sort.
Right.
And it's much easier to be like, hey, I have this data validation tool and set that I want to use, and I want to test it out. They're like, okay, cool. We'll approve more budget for StackPath or AWS, right? That process is a lot easier for the product manager to get approval to approve budget. The third component of all this is once you get all that, then how do you scale a positive test?
Right.
And how do you get approved budget, right?
Right.
So understanding the enterprise sales cycle is not just about how long it is and how do you get to the right person, but once you do get a deal, how do you successfully procure and make it easy for every stakeholder at a company like Boeing?
Exactly.
And so why StackPath is so this becomes one of the main reasons why I really like working with StackPath is because it provides that inroad into making it super easy for people to sign off on it. Over the past couple of years, you've seen partnership announcements and proof of concepts and sandbox test environments that have all been done on like 50 to 250K budgets in organizations that are like, we want to test out blockchain. And then they take it to the board because blockchain is one of the most talked about things on quarterly earnings reports for public companies.
Right.
That and AI. And so they want to be like, oh, by the way, we tested out this cool blockchain project, spike of price or whatever they're called. But how do you approve? What are you scaling? Once again, we're building these things that we don't have like traditional ways to scale it. And so this is kind of that ease of adoption that goes beyond the tech. The technology is just one component for ease of adoption. Then there's the scalability. And so working with StackPath is, and why, I like it versus, why I like working with them is that they're a mid-market company. And mid-market companies are much easier to work with. They're more, they're easier to navigate, and they get more excited about projects, and they have less noise and clutter in front of them. So you can actually build a solid foundation and relationship with somebody. I mean, StackPath's not a small company.
Right.
They're a mid-market company, and their past founders were the founders of SoftLayer that sold to IBM for like a multi-billion-dollar undisclosed amount, which I had met like years ago when I was working on my previous startup. So StackPath is kind of that. So I like to set that stage because that's kind of the vision. Is that how do we get every piece in that integration schedule to be super easy for people to turn off and on and test out various solutions?
Right. Well, I mean, that should make it easier like for future partnerships for you guys.
Yeah.
It's like the groundwork for all this.
So exactly. So if we can, it's easier for future partnerships if we have an inroad into working with a cloud infrastructure provider.
Right.
The second kind of component is StackPath is very big on security. They own all their servers.
Right.
So one of their value propositions is the amount of security they have, especially for streaming data. For some of their clients that have a lot of streaming data, which I don't know the whole gamut, but now we can introduce Constellation's ability to secure data in motion or data in transit, right? So they've got secure servers. Now let's add another layer of security to their for their clients. So this partnership has like many different layers to it, if you will. And on top of that, we can bring our partners to the table and have a containerized solution that's easy to deploy, and it's an easy to integration. And by the way, we happen to know everybody at the organization.
That's awesome.
Of Stack.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So I've spoken to your team a lot. We've been back and forth, and we always talk about like data as a currency, as opposed to the current model of like crypto as a currency. Can you expand a bit more on that?
Yeah, tokenizing data or crypto. I like what you just said. Would you say data as a currency?
Data as currency, yes.
Yeah. So this kind of goes a lot of our vision as a company is that data should be governed by a community. Yes. It shouldn't be governed by a centralized organization. Every day, some Fortune 500 company is getting hacked. Yep. And PII, personal information, is being leaked, and data is getting spilled, and it's also getting sold.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, and they're selling it, and so, you know, the Googles and Facebooks, yes, they sell ads, but they're in the business of selling data, and they're selling our data back to us, which is so messed up if you think about it. And we're already starting. You see the collective consciousness start to shift, where we're questioning our terms and services. A free application that you have to read this terms and services, signing over all your data. They're like, dude, just give them the software. We figured out how to monetize this. And so what our whole thing is, data is the currency of the future. It's already happening today, and we're starting to become more aware of it, and we're starting to become more skeptical. But the terms and services of Facebook, they've been doing this since they first started. We're just becoming aware.
Yeah.
So we believe that data can be packaged up and freely exchanged with people, letting them set the prices of their own information. Yeah. And this isn't just about personal information. This is all sorts of data sets where you can create some sort of free-flowing market. And so, you know, taking a step back, I'm like, well, many crypto companies are building exchanges, but our whole thing is, and what we've identified in monitoring these exchanges over the year, is how do you know the data is good? You need data validation before it gets. So you have to go further downstream, and which is where Constellation is, further downstream to validate that data before it gets to the exchange. So a lot of Constellation is just like powered by Constellation. We just want to be that badge that people are like, dude, I know this is valid data. I know it's gone through data validation, and it's governed by a community. I want to be on board on this. This is setting like new standards and expectations that I'm hoping, and that's our vision, is more people start to fall in line and go, oh, you're totally right. This is a big concern. So I've said a lot there, so I'll take a pause for a moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, obviously Facebook, Google, these data leaks happen all the time. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think in the future, people are going to be looking for like a badge that proves, hey, my data is not being sold to this person or this company. So I totally agree, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
It totally. I mean, look, the Facebooks and Google, it's going to start to, once people start to feel and totally understand what's going on, it's going to make logical sense that you have data governed by a community. Exactly. That's going to be such a powerful thing that it's going to put pressure on other companies to come out and be like, oh, we're on board with this. We're setting new standards around where our data goes and how it's governed and who it's sold to.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the future of the digital era.
Right. I mean, Facebook's Libra. I mean, you saw all the partners that were trying to jump on that data train board, trying to get in on that data that they were going to be able to, from transactional standpoint, they were going to be able to spread to the nodes. So everybody, they want that data, man.
Dude, it's wild. I mean, seeing the Libra coming out. I don't want to talk poorly about any company here, but I do think it's ironic that you're like, hey, what are the big companies that are sponsoring Libra and are putting in their $10 million bucks? It's all their advertisers, right? and they all want to own the entire supply chain, and they trust that Facebook knows how to be the data aggregate of the future.
They haven't done a very good job.
So and then they mask it under this Libra thing, and we're worried about the financial instrument that they're selling. This should be a cause for concern that they're just wrapping it up in this like millennial costume and saying like, hey, here's our crypto thing. We're a pretty good guy. It's like, who are you kidding?
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have said all that.
No, that's fine, dude. Wait, look, we're in crypto, man. This is how we roll.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I got two more questions for you. So now the partnership has been announced for StackPath. How long until you guys can actually implement that, or are you already integrated?
Yeah, we're actually in the process of it. Once again, StackPath is a much bigger company.
Yeah.
We've got some integrations coming up over the next couple weeks, and we're starting to make inroads into that relationship. And the first inroad, and this is kind of some of my philosophy, that anytime I want to work with somebody, I want to bring value to the table versus just extract value. It's not a right or wrong. It's just like that's kind of what my ethos is when I work with somebody. So with StackPath, we're bringing on we're kind of making it an easy on-ramp for our node operators. So our foundational nodes will have a price discount when they work with StackPath. Pricing is more affordable, and we'll be providing a containerized solution going forward. So we want this whole path of onboarding nodes to be a professional experience that hasn't been seen in the entire crypto space for mainnets, and providing that branded experience, and those kind of little levers will just make it a better experience overall. And so that's the first way we get started in working with StackPath, bringing our network to them and showing kind of the power of the Constellation community and what they bring forth. And then from there, we start to expand on our various use cases. And then also we've already started talking with their company and what are their clients looking for and what are those needs. So as I mentioned, there's different layers to it, and it's kind of following a sequential path of building that trust around that partnership. But it's very exciting for us, and it's a lot of our vision that in the future, every data scientist that's looking to use different solutions like a distributed network will be able to turn offer on for testing purposes, right? It should be as easy as that, and you're not like, oh my God, like we have to do all this
we have to do all these integrations, everything.
This new programming language, I don't know how to do this, but it should be super easy for everybody to get buy-in on it, and so we'll show that that's the part of it.
Yeah, awesome, good to hear.
Yeah.
And last question, do you have any Justin Sun style announcements to make some like teasers maybe of some future looming partnerships?
No, there's no lunches that I don't show up for. So no, we do have we have a couple of big partnerships, and I'm actually really excited about, and it's like I so want to share with everybody right now. I can't say who it is. I can tell you that it is a partnership with another company in the blockchain industry that has a very similar ethos to us, and it's a very smart team, and that will be coming out. We got mainnet on our hands right now, so you'll see it. But I'm pretty excited about this partnership. It kind of hits dear to home to me. So I think you'll see something. You'll see people react very positively to the announcement.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure doing this interview with you, Mr. Ben. And I know you gotta run. So it's been an awesome interview. Like I said, a lot of information from DAG. You guys have a lot going on right now. So again, really appreciate you.
Thanks, Ty. Great questions, Ty. This is great. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And what you guys are doing is just awesome. So it was a good conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We out.